right. For lesson 22, I'm going to go through and show you the solution in Excel for home improvement building supply. I'm going to first kind of get you oriented here on how I've organized the spreadsheet. But first of all, you'll see here in these cells the basic data from that data table. And again, for example, our patterns. Here's our pattern A with 3 7-foot boards, no 9-foot, no 10-foot, and 4 feet of trim loss. And so each one of our respective patterns are the number of boards and trim loss is given in each one of these columns corresponding A through F. Then the next set of cells is our decision variable cells. And again, these cells, which is C11 through H11, are empty decision variable cells. Next, I'm going to talk about the 2 objective functions that we're going to use, and I'm going to input these formulas in a minute. But once I'm actually, the formula that's in this cell, you'll see this is actually the formula that I'm going to eventually enter into this cell. This cell is C15, and that's the objective function that corresponds to the number of boards used. This function, of course, is the function I'll enter into the trim loss, and I'll talk about that in a minute as we get ready to talk about that in more detail. And then in each one of these cells, I'll respectively place these formulas. Now, these formulas here that I'm showing, they're not functional. They're just to tell you what is actually going to be in this cell. So this formula is going to be entered into this cell, and this formula will be entered into this cell. Now, I'm using these formulas for a purpose, and I want you to see here that these formulas here are perfectly fine to use, but you'll see they require many more keystrokes. I'm also going to eventually, I'm going to use this worksheet to solve our problem to minimize the number of boards. And then this spreadsheet we'll come to in a minute, where I'm going to minimize the trim loss, and I'll show you the difference. Now, one of the things that's unusual about this format is that when I will pull up the solver, and you'll see the solver icon up here in the upper right, when I pull up this solver icon, you will not be able to see it in Collaborate Ultra. So after I finish this video, I'm going to put up another video with screenshots of that solver, of the solver inputs, that will hopefully take you through that and make it clear to you. So anyway, let's dive into this. Again, for our decision variable cells, we're going to leave those blank. And in this cell, I'm going to input the formula equals this cell, which is C11, plus this cell, which is D11, plus E11, plus F11, plus G11, plus H11. Now that's the total number of boards used. For example, just hypothetically, if we use 5 of F, you see that corresponds, and then if we use 2 more of type A, it's going to add up the boards in that cell. So we want these to leave those empty. Now the trim loss, again, is a little bit different, because the trim loss is going to be equal to, there's 4 feet of trim loss times the number of boards of pattern A, plus 1 times the B plus 2 times the number of boards of pattern C plus, and I'm going to skip D because we can go now to 6 times this plus 5 times this. Now, you know, this is a little bit different, like actually, because I've actually put in this formula, I've used the number, and actually this is a good thing. So you can use either the number, the actual numbers that I'm showing here, 4 times C11 plus D11 plus 2 times E11, or you could actually use the cells themselves, which I've done here, which are those values. So this all corresponds to the trim loss. Then I'm in this cell, and this is going to be the same result here, similar result, because this is the now going to count the number of 7-foot boards that are going to be made. And so in this case, that's going to be 3, or that cell, times how many ever boards we use in pattern A, plus 2 times those in B, plus 2 times the ones that we use in pattern C, plus D, and then that's all. Okay, so you can see that we've made 7 boards. Now, for example, if we use 10 of pattern A, that means you'll see we make 30 boards. So again, that formula is working, and you can see now all of the formulas are working. And I suggest you do that just to make sure that your formulas are working correctly. So I'm going to delete that. All right, then I'm going to do similar thing for our 9-foot boards. So this is going to be, we're looking at how we've got this. We've got 1 for 9-foot board if we use pattern C, plus 2 if we times the ones that we use for pattern D, plus again whatever the number that we use for pattern E. And so that, and let's see if we put 10 in here, we've made, and notice the trim loss is not any, because there's not any in the trim loss. And 10 boards total, 10 7-foot boards and 20 9-foot boards. So that's working. So I'm going to delete that. And now for the last constraint, we're our 10-foot board. So we look at our 10-foot pattern, and you'll see we're going to make 1 times the 10-foot pattern B that we use, plus we go all the way over, and we've got 1 board for each of pattern E, plus now 2 times what we made for pattern E. And we hit enter, and let's again just check that. Let's suppose we make 10 of pattern F, and yes, you'll notice we've used 10 boards. Our trim loss is 50, and we've made 20 10-foot boards. So all of our formulas seem to be working. I'm going to delete this. Now we're ready to go to Solver, and I'm going to describe this, but it won't appear on your screen, but it will appear. It'll be more clear when you on the next video, which I will show the actual, take screenshots and show you the solver input. So first thing you're going to do is go to after you've installed, and hopefully by now you've installed Solver, you'll go to your Solver icon, and I think the Mac icon here is a little bit different from what you'll see, but it's going to always be at the far right of your data tab. Of course, notice here, this is the home tab. This is the data tab, and you're going to pick solver. The first thing that you're going to do is you will go in and you'll highlight the objective function that you want to use. Then you'll select a radio button, a minimization radio button. Then you'll go and you'll select and highlight all of your decision variable cells. And then you're going to go and you're going to add your constraints one at a time. All right, and so you'll have a constraint 7-foot boards. Drop down menu has to be greater than or equal to 700. Then you'll add another constraint. The 9-foot boards has to be greater than or equal to 1200. And then you add, and the 10-foot boards have to be greater than or equal to 500. And then you have all of those constraints in, and then you'll check the box to make unconstrained variables non-negative. Check the drop-down box. Solving method is simplex LP, and then click solve, and then click OK. And here's your answer, and it should come up that quickly. And you'll notice all of these constraints are satisfied exactly. We've cut 700 7-foot boards, 1200 9-foot, and 500 10-foot. We've used 875 boards to accomplish that, and the trim loss is 1175 feet. So we've got a lot of excess board feet left over 1,000 board feet left over. But that's the solution for the objective function. The number of boards used. Okay. Now what I want to say is I'm going to go through quickly and show you the solution on the next worksheet for trim loss. And what you'll want to know is on this is you can, again, this doesn't show up, but if you right click, and let me go to the, if you go to your Excel ribbon and you go to edit, or you go to the, you right click on the worksheet title, you'll get a window and it'll ask you, and there's a move or copy option. If you click move or copy and then click create a copy, you can copy everything that's on this page, including the solver, into another worksheet. Okay, and that's what this worksheet is. And I'm going to delete this right away. And what I want to note is that first of all, it's all the same information with a couple of exceptions. You'll notice that in each one of these cells, I've used a different formula. The formulas that I've used are shown here, but the formulas here are different because they require many fewer keystrokes, and so they're less subject to making errors because, for example, for this function, I'm just going to use the sum function, and I'm going to sum up everything of all of our decision variables from C11 to H11, and that's that function. Similarly, for the trim loss, rather than going step by step, I can use the sum product function, and I'm going to highlight our trim loss cells, and then comma, and pair those, if you will, with the decision variable cells. So this function will calculate again, compute the product of each of these respective cells, and then compute the sum of them of those. So it actually does that same calculation. And again, it's much fewer keystrokes. And you'll see how I've done that for each one of these respective cells. This is different too, because I've also now entered the number of required boards as a data entry. And since all of these are greater than or equal to constraints, we can enter these all as one rather than enter them as three. And that's what we're going to do on this spreadsheet. Now, you'll remember our objective function that we focused on was the number of boards used. On this one, we're going to focus on the trim loss. And to do that, once you go to Solver, the only thing that you're going to do differently now, if you've got these all entered correctly, which you have, is to enter the, go into Solver and then change the objective function location from the number of boards used cell to the trim loss cell. Once you do that, you just close, or excuse me, don't close. Since everything is there correctly, you hit solve, and then you'll get this, should get this solution, you will get this solution. That's 1,100 boards used, and only now 500 feet of trim loss. So we've reduced the trim loss from 1,100, almost 1,200 feet down to 500 feet, but you notice we've used many more boards. And in fact, not only do we have 500 feet in trim loss, but we've got 900 additional 7-foot boards that we've cut. And so we may not need those 900, or we may know that there's another order coming for 7-foot boards. And so this is you'll see the difference in these two solutions. So this is a relatively easy problem to solve in Excel. I'll post this spreadsheet on D2L for you to see and use. I would suggest you go in and just play around with it, make sure you're comfortable with it as we go forward. Okay, that's how we're going to solve the home improvement building supply company. As always, let me know if you have questions.